IMS Human Rights Initiative Society in association with Just Corpus. To convert this corona crisis into an opportunity and knowledge, we have our esteemed presence of Advocate Jayant Bhatt, who, as a speaker, has left no opportunity to contribute to this legal arena. Sir is also known for his well-influential LinkedIn post with which he keeps motivating young budding lawyers. A very warm welcome to you. Before we move ahead with this, I would like to introduce you all with the Human Rights Initiative Society of IMS Law College, Noida. This Human Rights Initiative is a great step taken by the students of IMS Law College, Noida to promote the basic ideologies of human rights. This has been working in college very effectively with the graces of President IMS Sri Rajiv Kumar Gupta, Dean Academics Dr. Manju Gupta, Dean IMS Law College Dr. K.S. Bhati, and Faculty Convener Ankit Rai, Faculty Advisor Dr. Neeti Sinha, and Program Coordinator Professor Govind Prasad Goyal. This society is being led by Megha Gupta, President IMS Human Rights Initiative, and Shikha Walia being the Vice President. This event has an assistance of Vishwas Pandey and Jukneet Kaur, with and Aditi Pandey as the student coordinator. Before we move further, I would take this opportunity to introduce our eminent speaker, Advocate Jayant Bhatt. Advocate, Supreme Court of India. Sir is an independent lawyer based out of New Delhi. Sir holds dual Masters of Law from New York University, USA, and National University of Singapore, and is a member of the prestigious Supreme Court Bar Association and Delhi High Court Bar Association. His office caters varied clients comprising of governmental and non-governmental bodies, multinationals, financial institutions, and individuals in an array of matters. Sir, besides being a practicing advocate, is also a prolific speaker at various platforms and is an individual with firm belief for greater societal good. He has a keen interest in teaching and mentoring young minds and is an advisory board member to various organizations, including that of Just Corpus. He regularly features in news articles and columns and is also a writer and a thoughtful leader. I welcome you, sir, with our whole heart, and thank you for giving us your precious time. Now I request Dr. Manju Gupta to grace this event with her kind words. Do we have ma'am over here?
If Japneet, if Manju ma'am is not here, I think she is not here.
Okay, I thought she was okay.
No, so we can go ahead with Dean, sir.
All right, sir. Now I request Professor Dr. K.S. Bhati, IMS Law College, to welcome our esteemed guest of the day. Dean, sir. Sir, is Dean sir here?
Just a minute. Vishwas?
Sir, his name is not visible yet, so I can't confirm.
Just a minute. Is Neeti ma'am is there in the session? Yes, Neeti ma'am is there.
Yes,
Japneet, so call Neeti ma'am for introduction, okay, of the eminent speaker.
Now I request our faculty advisor, Dr. Neeti Sinha, to please welcome our esteemed guest for the day.
Thank you, Jaspreet. Respected guest speaker for today's webinar, Sri Jayant Bhatt, and all the delegates of this webinar, respected other dignitaries and senior colleagues and my colleagues and dear students. it's a great day for all of us because we have been planning under this human rights initiative various programs in this period of crisis, because as we all know, it's a global pandemic and we all have been suffering in this period of crisis. But again, as I always say, that if there is a will, there is a way. So knowledge sharing process and understanding things in a better way cannot be stopped if we have that kind of spirit. So I congratulate all the organizers and my hearty welcome to our respectable guest speaker for today's webinar and all the delegates. And we are eager to hear what discussions we are going to and deliberations from our honorable guest speaker of the day. So without taking much time, I once again welcome all of you in this very important topic webinar under this period of crisis, and hoping that at the end, definitely we are going to understand things better related to human rights and how this period of pandemic is also in a way it is a very negative time for all of us, but every adversity has some opportunities also. So through this learning process, definitely we will be having a clear vision related to the topic. So I welcome everybody in this webinar once again. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your kind words. Now, before we begin our webinar, I would request all the attendees in the Zoom session to kindly keep posting their questions in the chat box, and all the attendees in the YouTube to keep posting their questions in the live chat. And all the queries would be addressed at the end of this session. We would like to take as many questions as we can, but because of the time constraint, we may address maximum 2 questions by each participant. The floor is yours, sir. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Japneet ji, faculty members, students, and obviously IMS Law College Noida for having me on board today. The first hurdle I faced in protecting my human rights today is to get to the Zoom webinar, because it was quite full and I had to speak to Vishwas. Please let me have an entry, because I have to, speak about human rights. So that starts with me, as a lawyer, as a torchbearer of legal rights, as an officer of the court. I think lawyers have to be at the forefront of doing things to protect the right of each and everybody. Before I start speaking and start giving you a monologue, my request is I always prefer my sessions to be interactive and fruitful, and that can only happen if all the students here and the audience, whosoever wants to, and I have nothing against people switching on their cameras. So anybody who wants to switch on their camera, please switch on your camera, because I want a webinar to feel like a seminar where I can make eye contact with you, I can look at you, I can talk to you, because computer से तो मैं अपने आमतौर पे वैसे भी अपने अकेलेपन में बात कर लेता हूँ. So it's very important that I can look at your beautiful faces. All of you are there. Switch on your cameras. I don't take anything personally. If you are lying down, if you are not properly dressed, I think that's a personal thing. To each his own. But the idea of interacting with the audience and spreading the word of human rights is to have a look at all the wonderful human beings here and take it forward. And luckily, my bandwidth is, by God's grace, doing fine, and the Wi-Fi is spectacular in my office. So that also helps me achieve my lot of human rights goals while talking to people. Right. So having said that, I think the 3 main questions which are grappling humankind right now are as follows. The first question is, when are we going to find a proper vaccination for COVID-19? Number 2 is if I'm visible, and number 3, if I'm audible. So I don't know about the first answer, but definitely considering that I'm visible and audible, and some of you have already started putting your cameras on. So I think the humanity, has answered question number 2 and 3 to start with the Human Rights Project today. Now, what is human rights? I'm not going to give you a boring lecture on what human right is. We are all born with it. The Constitution defines it. The Supreme Court has laid down in multiple case laws that under Article 21, right to live with dignity also categorizes as human rights. And that's the most paramount article enshrined in the Constitution of India, which gives you a plethora of liberties, but obviously with restrictions to express yourself, to be what you are, and to stand, the rights which are imbibed in you by birth. Some of these rights are by birth, which are naturally given to you. Some of these rights are given to you by the Constitution of this country, so that you can speak your mind freely. You can do things that you want to do actively and freely without any restrictions. When we speak of human rights in COVID-19 times, I think there have been few instances which have been highlighted. Number one, I think the first highlight that we got at the start of COVID-19 was the plight of migrant workers. The way the COVID-19 nationwide lockdown was announced, we saw a huge, inter-state and across the country, a lot of inter-border transactions of a lot of laborers with their families. So much so that there were some disturbing pictures on news channels saying that people who did not have their own private vehicles, any mode of commuting from point A to point B. We saw people carrying their luggage, their children boarded on that luggage, and so on and so forth. And regarding this, a PL was instituted by one gentleman in Supreme Court, Mr. Alok Srivastav. I think that was the name of the PL by which it was filed, to look into these, the plight of migrant workers and how best we can, resolve this. There was another PL which was subsequently, I think, later filed by a senior lawyer, Mr. Ashwini Kumar, also our ex-union law minister a few years ago, I think, who highlighted the fact on the conditions of COVID-19 warriors in hospitals and other things, and also the aspect of how the bodies were being dumped of the people who had unfortunately died in coronavirus pandemic. So all those things have been now taken to Supreme Court, and Supreme Court is apprised of the matter and deliberating the topic. What were the other things that we all saw in various news channels and social media, which was violative of human right? I think the highlighted case was the case of Jairaj in Phoenix, the brutality which occurred in the police station, by which the father and son were brutally murdered. It was a case of custodial death, and I think the High Court then took cognizance of the matter, and FIR under Section 302, which is murder, was later registered. Also, we saw the huge encounter of the known gangster Mr. Pandit, Vikas Pandit, and on that also human rights activists and other people, civil society, raised alarming concerns as to how this encounter took place, and the law was taken for a right. Why were people not, why were media people not given the leeway to record all these things? So many things have come to the fore during these COVID-19 times, instead of what constitutes human rights and how human rights have been blatantly violated by the authorities. And these authorities are not just police persons. They can be anybody who is violating your right. Other new things, I think, which have come up is whether people have been careful enough in the corona times to take precautionary measure to safeguard themselves and their families and their neighbors and their societies. So if you are someone who is going out but not wearing a mask, if you are someone who has been quarantined but have not informed the SDM or the DM of the area, thereby a proper poster or information could not be lodged on your premises or on your residence, and due to your laxity or lapses in being responsible to protect the right of others, you have spread corona. You have been charged. There was a famous case of Tablighi Jamaat, which we all know of, where a lot of foreign nationals were, against whom FIR was lodged, and a lot of people were then, arrested and subsequently granted bail. And I think the latest news report and the judicial report also talks of plea bargaining and how they have been let go after, entering into a plea bargain mechanism in the trial court, and they have been subsequently sent back to their countries. So all these issues, revolve around the basic issue of human right as to how do we go about protecting them. But one good thing, I think, which has come to the forefront among this coronavirus is how courts have been really at the front of protecting your and my right and the right of every individual and citizen, not only of this country, but human rights in general, whether it be a case of Tablighi Jamaat, whether it be the case of Jairaj in Phoenix, whether it be the case of Vikas Pandit, or any other case relating to the plight of migrant workers or COVID-19 warriors, etc., etc. All these things have been taken into consideration on a daily basis through virtual court hearings. And I think I salute my judicial system for doing that, because that's the last pillar and last hope for many of us when we are lost and we are looking for the right kind of jurisprudence and guidance in our day-to-day life. And because we are homebound, we do look forward to a lot of guidance in terms of case law, in terms of judgments, in terms of what the courts have to say when they say human rights being trampled upon either by authorities or other people at large. Before I think advancing further, I must request that there is a chat box I can see, in this Zoom area. So anybody who has any question, feel free to interject me. Feel free to ask me your doubts, even if you, in the middle of when I'm addressing you, because I like inviting questions from my audience, because sometimes the questions that you have are so engaging and are so enriching that I also end up learning from them. So I would invite all the audience of IMS Law College, or even people who are on YouTube, to please put their questions so that we can make it as engaging as possible. Because wherever you are living, whichever part of the country you are from, I'm sure you must have seen few human rights violations, in plain eyesight, either with your neighbor, within your family members, or with society at large. We have also had incidents where some public interest litigations were lodged in Supreme Court, saying that cases of domestic violence have spiked. We have also seen certain cases where women rights have been highlighted as to how certain women who are in a marriage setup, or even who are in a live-in relationship, have been facing certain plight from the partner or partner's family, so on and so forth. So one question that I keep asking myself is, was the violation of human rights in the time of Corona any different from the time when the situation was normal? And the only thing which comes to my mind is perhaps no, because human rights is so basic right, which has been ingrained in the law, in the constitution, that we have it unless it's taken away from us, unless we are either brutalized, or we are beaten, or we are confined, or we are deprived of those rights till the time we realize that we have lost the rights which has been imbibed by law to us by and large. So I'll give you an example which happened with one of an unknown person during Corona times. Is that a driver was driving his vehicle to just go to a dairy to get some milk in the evening, and I think it was the first month of the lockdown, and he was arrested by the police while coming back to my client's house. And only on the ground that police said you cannot come out in a lockdown. And the only thing that he was doing is he was wearing a mask properly, being in the car, and had gone to pick up some milk and other grocery before the curfew time was to be charged. I think the curfew time back in I think March or April was 7 p.m. in the night. So he was arrested. Section 188 FIR was lodged on him, and then I was called, and in an emergency matter I went to my local police station here. I spoke to the police people and I said, on what ground have you arrested him? It's also, if you see, is an abuse of the process of law. Just because he's a poor person, he's trying to, abide by what his employer is telling him. And groceries are a must if you have, elder people in the house, if you have children in the house, if you have family member in the house, you need groceries, you need medical supplies, you need other, basic essentials which are required. So, this also showed me the high-headedness of police people. And I think there is no data so far, or at least I have not come across any data so far, which can accumulate across the country FIRs which have been lodged on Section 188 itself, during the Corona time, saying that all these FIRs have been lodged on different people. So when I went to the police station, the other thing which I witnessed was there were a lot of two-wheelers and even four-wheelers which were parked outside and inside the police station, because the parking was full and the police station was also full by cutting so many challans and FIRs on these vehicles. And that was mind-boggling, because I asked the police people that you have so many vehicles, but you do not have any space to keep them. How are you doing it? And then imagine people, when I talk of human rights, imagine how people will commute, because if there is no metro, if there is no DTC buses running, if there is no public transport, which is happening in a lockdown, and you're also lodging a FIR against people by taking their vehicles and impounding them, then the only recourse they have is to go to a court of law. But unfortunately, the courts are also in a shutdown, and they're working in a very limited manner. So, that small, minute experience that I just shared with all of you, it also taught me the value of being a lawyer, to be champion for human rights, to stand, for the rights of other people when they can't stand up for themselves. And I think that is the beauty of being a lawyer. That is the beauty of being a legal professional, because not only are you aware of the rights which are being taken away from you, you're also aware as to how to go about it and maneuver in a difficult position. So, that was one incident. The other incident I inquired again with my local police station was that one of my clients, which is a big bank in the country, the bank manager was being harassed by a person who came and started abusing them. And this was in the month of May, when I think the partial lockdown was lifted. And he called me in an emergency and he said, Vakil Saab, can you please come? There is this particular client and he's creating a ruckus. It also transpired that that particular client who was trying to create a ruckus was also a fellow lawyer practicing in district courts in Delhi. And that was very astonishing because, the branch manager was in an emergency situation. Not only was he taking care of his branch, he also had to take care of the limited staff which was functioning in his bank premises. So I went to the bank. I asked him if he has all the CCTV footages with him, and I helped him draft a criminal complaint. And then I took him in my car to the police station, and we got the complaint lodged there. Thereafter which, the person did not disturb him, and the matter was eventually put to rest. So, human rights is not a big hullabaloo where you have to all the time go to Supreme Court or High Court or file a public interest litigation. Even the minutest thing on your own, you can stand for people. You can really, stand up for their rights. And whenever you see rights being trampled upon by police authorities, by municipal authorities, by licensing authorities, by any authorities which are not letting you live the way you are ought to live under the guidance and under the privileges that you have been, enshrined by the Constitution of India, then you must, become the voice of the voiceless. And that is very important. I'll also give you another example. The third example, which again made me revisit my local police station, was about 2 weeks ago. And I also narrated this in one of my LinkedIn posts. Is where my office is. It's in an area called New Friends Colony in New Delhi, and we have another block. There are 4 blocks in New Friends Colony. So I think one of the welfare society president or somebody, they made a complaint that most of the cars are parked on the roads, so they have to be removed. And imagine this: when people are homebound, when people are under home quarantine, or when people are under lockdown, and if they have limited space in the house, they have no other place to park the car. That is but given. So I think the PCR when started doing the rounds in the colony area and started issuing challans to all the cars one by one. And there was a car of this gentleman which was standing on the gate along with the driver and in front of his whole own house premises. And when the driver raised an objection, he was reprimanded by the police. The next day, the driver was again with the vehicle. So the police took the driver, snatched away his phone and took him to the police station. I again got a call and I again revisited the police station and I said, under what provisions of law, have you taken him? And the police person then tells me, why was he recording the video? So I told him, under what provision of law is recording a video a crime? He is not being an impediment. He is not coming to the road. He is not laying down on the road to block your vehicle. He is only asking you a question. So the problem with the police in this country is the moment you question them, they don't want to answer you. Because sometimes they think they can do anything which is extrajudicial and they will be okay with it. And that's the problem, So all the small incidents I'm trying to tell you have happened in my neighborhood. One with the branch manager, two different neighbors, one whose driver is apprehended, one whose driver is then detained and not arrested, so as to say in legal terminology, because for arrest you have to lodge an FIR, so on and so forth. So all these things are happening, in a capital in Delhi. So I can't even assume how rights are being trampled upon in other parts of the country. I also saw this small video footage of, I think, a husband and wife, I think in some part of Odisha, if I'm not mistaken. And this video became very viral on Twitter and other social media platforms also, where I think they were not vacating their fields where they were growing their, farm products. But I think at least 10 to 12 people from police came and they started, dragging them by the collar. And I think one of the family member tried to intervene. He was also bashed by the police people. And I think then because of the high-handedness of the police, the family members were also being partially disrobed in that video. So it was a very difficult video to watch. I think eventually, I don't know if any cognizance has been taken in that matter subsequently or not. That video was very circular, gained wide popularity. The other incident that we're all aware of again is Jairaj in Phoenix, which happened. Very unfortunate incident. This also I think became viral because of one of the Instagram video that I saw of this lady in Kerala, if I'm not wrong. She is, I think, a radio jockey or a musician, and I think she made it viral. Narrating the plight of Jairaj and Phoenix and how they were in the dead of the night. I think about 8:30 in the evening, taken by the local police people. I think I can't remember if the state is Karnataka or Kerala, but I think wherever the locality was, they were taken. And the local police station then, did beat them black and blue, so much so that they were brutalized in a way that, they eventually lost their life. And a case of murder, was then lodged, and also internal investigation of the people who were in charge of the police station, the SHO and the other officers in charge was also taken. Now, I think, the question that we need to ask ourselves is, these incidents are happening in every part of the country, in every nook and cranny that we can possibly fathom. What can we do to safeguard the rights of the people that we see around us? They don't necessarily have to be our citizens, but the moment they are in our country, the moment they are in our jurisdiction, and the moment we see a wrong being done to them, what can we do? We must know our rights. We must be aware of them. If you think that a person is showing high readiness, by all means you can also dial 100 number. It will be a matter of a cross FIR. You also have to stand up for your rights. You as a lawyer or as a law student should know what is right from wrong. I'll give you a brief narrative, not of Corona times, but something that I personally witnessed about 3 years ago in a medical shop in a very famous market called Connaught Place in New Delhi. So, I was taking a round and I had gone to a medical shop to get some medical supplies. It's a very famous medicine shop. And everybody was standing in a queue, after having collected their medicine to give cash to the cashier. And there was an old gentleman who was sitting, who was the owner of the shop, and his son was also running the shop, and then they had their other employees, etc. So while everybody was waiting in the medical shop, this lady with her boyfriend comes, and she starts demanding for a particular medicine. And because the staff was busy, they requested her to kindly wait for 5 minutes. But I don't know what happened. She started creating a ruckus, and then starting raising her voice on the old gentleman who was the owner of the shop and was sitting in his chair. And she said, if you don't give my medicine to me and I'm demanding this medicine from you, I'll call the police. And before the old gentleman could do anything, she dialed 100 number. And I was standing there and I was watching all this. So I went to this old gentleman. I said, Babuji, you are, I think you are the owner of the shop. And I spoke to the son. I'm like, look, I think she has called 100 number. And I can see it in front of my eyes. You have CCTV cameras and everything. And she's trying to create a ruckus. And I don't know why she was creating a ruckus. You also please call 100 number. So both people called 100 number and the police came. And I looked at this lady. I'm like, look, I'll be the witness. If God and me are the witness of your incident, then I'll be the witness. And I'll ensure that you go behind the bars. And she got very scared. I said, it was your bad luck and the good luck of the gentleman that I, as a lawyer, am in a shop at the point in time when you're trying to, arm twist him. So the police came. Police said, we got 2 calls from the shop. What was going on? And I gave them my visiting card. I said, I'm a lawyer. I'm here to buy medicines. And this is what the lady has done. If you need to take my statement, take my statement. There are 4 CCTV cameras in the shop. You can take footage from them. And then the lady started, saying sorry to the gentleman and everybody that, oh, I'm so wrong and this and that. So, she was trying to trample on human rights of other people also. And by human rights, she could have lodged a false sexual harassment claim. She could have, lodged any false complaint against the shop owners, had, I had not intervened at that particular point in time. So what is the idea of giving you this illustration? All these live examples that I have been a part of. The idea is you have to have a presence of mind, and presence of mind comes from your experience. The moment you see something wrong is happening, and the wrong doesn't have to happen 100 kilometers away from you or 1,000 kilometers away from you. Even in your neighborhood, even in your own house, if you think domestic violence is happening, if you think children are being, beaten by their parents, or if you can see a mark by knowing that domestic violence is happening, you must, raise your voice, you must raise your concern. And you must, bring it to a logical end. If you have to go to the police station, if you have to go to, and complain to the people against any wrongdoing, you must do that. As human beings, I think it's a prerogative to stand for what is right and to stand against what is wrong. And I think that is very important. So I think, I've spoken enough for past 25 minutes. I would now request Japneet ji and, other members to please have their questions, whatever questions you may have in your mind. And also if there are any questions on YouTube, I'll be happy to have them, and take this discussion further with all the audiences
here. Japneet, are you there?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Japneet?
Yes. Hello?
Please proceed. Yeah.
I'll just proceed with it. Just a second. I'll just do it.
Yeah, sure.
Till then, if there is anybody else who has their own questions, you please may proceed with it.
Sorry. Hello.
I was saying if there is anyone else who has questions, they may proceed with it. I'll just be back with it. I'll just be back with the questions.
Uh, Aditi, are you here? Aditi?
Yes, yes, I am here.
Then you can proceed with the questions.
The question. Thank you, Vishwas. Good evening, everyone. Now I'll be asking the questions which was asked on the Google Forms, and after that we will addressing the questions which are asked in the Zoom chat box. First, sir, the first question is: the migrant workers crisis, which covered whole of the India, has led to several steps taken by government, like not permitting laborers to work outside state by UP government or scrapping minimum wages act. This is a gross violation of human rights of the workers. Don't you think that these steps can begin a dangerous trend for future?
Madam, I think UP and just 2-3 more states have waived off the basic requirements under the labor compliances. But I think to their mind, I think the state government thinks they have taken the right step because the economy has taken a huge bashing in the meantime. I think I'm not sure if any case has been lodged yet, but there were some public interest litigations which were supposed to be agitated on these grounds. Considering the right of the migrant workers who have migrated back to their home states, and also the plight of workers, if they were to do this. We must understand that, we already have many provisions of the Constitution in place, especially Article 19, Article 23 and Article 24, which specifically talks about trade unions, rights, and the rights of laborers to form trade unions or workers to form trade unions and agitate their contention before, their employer. And, you cannot also have the case where we can have children forced into labor, because that is prohibited by Article 23, which, prohibits forced labor. So that can't be done just because, a family of migrant workers or labor is in dire need of financial need. Then we also have, things which are abolishing child labor. But at the same time, when we think of the financial situation of the migrants, it is really poor. The way the panic happened and the way this panic was triggered across the nation, and the way a migrant population traveled back to their home state, a lot needs to be worked for their, employment, for engagement of industries. And I think the economy has to revive. But we also have to think on the other tangent that the economy cannot revive if we have too many stringent laws, which are acting as a blockages for that industry or for that factory to run effectively. So, there are both the things which have to be, taken into consideration, that it's the right of the employer versus the right of the employee, or is it the right of both the employer and employee which has to be considered together and then taken in a way by which the economy can also rebound and the law also cannot act as an impediment. So I think that is something which requires a larger debate on this.
Okay, sir. The second question is, although there are various legislation protecting the human rights, but still the rights of the vulnerable sections of the society has still been infringed and violated at a large scale. How can we stop it? And what more stringent acts and legislation the government can enact to protect the human rights?
We have enough number of good laws already. So India is, I think, perhaps one of those countries which has too many laws. So having too many laws is not a problem. But the idea is, despite having these too many laws, how do you teach the essence of humanity to people? That is very important. For example, if I were to ask you in a reverse question methodology, that what happened with Jairaj in Phoenix happened in a police custody, happened with police people. And police people are supposed to be literate. They are supposed to know CRPC. They are supposed to know rights of other people and their own rights. And if something like this happens in a police custody, if lynching happens publicly, if eve teasing is happening, if domestic violence is happening, people are literate, or at least if they're not literate, they are made aware on a day-to-day basis by not many advertisements or by government intervention or NGOs and other academic bodies of to educate them of their legal rights and what is right and what is wrong. But despite this, you cannot change human psyche. I think the only solution perhaps which we can have is have lot number of these webinars which educate people. And by webinars, I just don't mean law students. We must reach out to maximum number of people who are members of civil society, students in the school, housewives, and family people in general, to make them aware of their rights. Till the time they're not aware of their rights, and I'm not saying by means of aware of the right, they should know how to agitate their rights. I may know that this is my right, but how do I go about agitating it? How I have to dial 100 number, I have to go to court, is legally provided for me or not? So, in one of the webinars, somebody asked me that how can women or poor people can agitate their right? And, I gave them this answer that legal aid is a provision which is provided in our country from trial court to Supreme Court. And all the courts have a legal aid cell, which caters to the requirement of people, and they have their own financial guidelines to cater to people either below poverty line or of a certain financial criteria. If you have a particular annual income, and let's say your annual income, for the sake of example, is 5 lakh per year, and if you fall within this criteria or less, then legal aid will be provided to you to protect your rights. And for women across the country, it doesn't really matter which economic background you come from, you can always avail a legal aid help, and that travels across the country in all the legal aid panels. So I think we must be aware of your rights. Any women that who is struggling, who cannot afford a lawyer's fee, or even if they would like to avail legal aid process from a court of law, you must tell them that, so they can go and engage a proper lawyer, which are on the board of legal aid panel by different courts, and that will help them fight the legal battle, and get them justice eventually.
Sir, this is just a minute. Sir, this is my personal question. Once I was interning, and my work was to do survey for 1 week. I have to do surveys and fill the forms. So on my very first day, I reached a school where the principal was a lady. And we entered the premises, and then, as you said, that we have to make aware people about their legal aid so they can fight for their justice. But being the principal of the school, and that the principal was a lady, she just said to me that she has lost completely. She has zero faith in our legal system, as her neighbors were continuously nagging their lives. But when I said you have much faith, then she said, sorry, but I have lost zero faith in the law system, and I'm not going to fill any forms which are you performing the survey. This really shook me from the depth of my heart, as I am a law student, and from that I must ensure that every people which I met must believe in law or must believe in justice. But at the way she talked, and she was a very educated person, and if an educated person of this country lost the faith in the legal system, then how can we suppose that the housewife and the other vulnerable group will come forward and seek justice for themselves?
Madam, I think it's a good observation. I'll tell you the real problem as to why this is happening. It's not just because our system sometimes takes time, but there are equal number of good judges and hardworking and honest lawyers who are working day in and day out to give justice to people. The problem is people who have never been to court, and I don't think this lady had been to court or no, I have no idea, though she was a principal of a school. But if you go to court, you realize under what circumstances the judges are working, especially when I say of judges, I say district court judges, because high court are still having better infrastructure, better facilities, etc. So the person or the institution that I keep blaming is media. Media has its own propaganda, media has its own agenda. And if you see debates on TV, they never go to any logical conclusions. I have not been seeing news for at least past 10 years. Unless somebody makes me a prisoner and forces me to watch a news, that's a different thing. But I on my own don't watch news because I think it's a circus, number one. Number two, what you see in the news is never a logical debate. You will have 2 lawyers or 4 lawyers, and then 4 people from civil society, 4 people from human rights, 4 people from media, and everybody shouting at each other. So they give an impression that everything works in the same manner. Also, no good news about judiciary is by and large reported. Sometimes you will say that you will try to put judiciary in a controversy. I'll give you this example of Vikas Pandit encounter which happened, and people say, "Oh, bada acha hua isko maar diya." It was quick justice. That's what people think. Now, these are the same people when the police comes to their family. I gave you 3 narratives of the lockdown. जब यहाँ पे मेरे local पुलिस थाने में मेरे round लगे, मैंने आपको 3 narratives दिए उसके. So on the similar lines, if police were to pick up their family member, then the first person that they're going to go is to a lawyer, and then they're going to go to a court. They're not going to go to a police person कि आप ऐसा कर लो. यही जयराज फिनिक्स के साथ भी हुआ. So when Jayaraj Phoenix happens, then police is bad. When Vikas Pandit happens, then police is good. But judiciary is always bad because people want to pin a blame on judiciary because they do not know how the judiciary works. So people will do whatever masala is thrown at them, whatever TRP is thrown at them. because most of the people are homebound. Look at Corona situation. Most of the people in these 3 months were homebound. They do not know how the actual world is working. I, as a lawyer, could narrate you 3 incidents because as a lawyer, I was supposed to go to a police station. I was supposed to go to courts through virtual means and argue my cases. So I know what is happening in the society. But for a normal housewife, you know, who even her in a normal day-to-day routine does not step too much out of the house. And Corona to bhuli jayiye, she would not be able to step out of the house because of the fear of catching the virus. Would not know anything. And then people have this mindset that judiciary is not working. If judiciary was not working, then all the judgments which have been given by Supreme Court and other high courts since the time that we have attained independence on human rights would not be there. You know, then discard all those judgments. You should have told the principal that, ma'am, please don't believe in the rule of law. Then please jump all the red lights that you see on the road. Then please do not follow your rules and regulations and orders that you have, in your school. Then please do not follow the diktat of the Education Ministry since today, which was erstwhile called the Human Rights Ministry, in your school. Why are you following it? You are following it because it is a rule of law in the country. There are regulations, guidelines, and bylaws, you know, in the country, and everything runs by the rule of law. So the principal on one hand cannot blow hot and cold saying, I don't believe in the rule of law or the judiciary of this country. But tomorrow, if her education institute is dragged in the court of law, she'll still be needing lawyers and judges to decide a matter. So you cannot have, you know, a win-win situation or a highway or a my way type of mindset. You have to be, you know, very neutral in your approach.
Okay, thank you so much, sir. Another question is, a lot of countries around the world are imposing restrictions on a lot of things like freedom of movement, restriction on work, and so on. How do you balance these restrictions without infringing on the rights of people? How does one draw the line between something like this being constitutional and unconstitutional?
Madam, there are two different things. When we talk of constitution, we mean the Constitution of India. And when we talk of other countries, they have their own constitution. So unless we are drawing, a comparative analysis of different constitution, it will become an academic exercise. And to my mind, it will not bear any fruit. You have to look at Corona in terms of economic mindset also. Not everything is legal all the time, but yes, everything is governed by law, even the economics sometimes. So we have to think it in a much larger scale. So every country that you think of which has been struggling from Corona also has a bounden duty upon themselves to create employment for their local citizens and their people who are already residing there. So they have to look after their own first. I'll give you a parallel to this. Today, do you think people in India would be okay with the fact if we say, look, we are not going to give any employment to Indian citizens, but we'll give employment to foreigners coming from Pakistan, Bangladesh, America, Australia, Bhutan, Nepal, etc., because everybody was Corona crisis hit. So that cannot be a logical solution to a problem. First, we have to safeguard your own. It's similar to how defense works, right? When we have ordered Rafale right now, we have ordered it to secure our boundary. So you have to secure your people first, and then you have to think about other people. So I think our judiciary and our government is doing whatever they can do, and other governments are doing what they think is in the best interest. I don't think anybody's human right is being trampled right now, so far as generating employment is concerned.
Okay. So another question for the participants is, the person with disabilities are one of the most excluded groups in terms of health prevention and among the hardest hit in terms of transmission risk and actual fatalities. Sir, do you think that there is a lack of emergency support to the people with disabilities in India amid COVID-19?
Madam, I don't think so. Unless your audience has come across a case where they were discriminated by a hospital on their disability, I won't think I'm right. It would be right for me to comment, because hospitals and all our COVID warriors, including doctors and nurses, have looked at the people, with whatever disability. You can, even if I have weak eyes, it can be visual disability, so as to say. So disabilities are different type. It doesn't only mean amputing or a part being amputated or, other things. Disability comes in all forms and sizes. You will have to read medical sciences into greater detail to understand what legal disabilities are about. But I don't think there has been a discrimination unless you can show me a data which says that people with, disabilities are discriminated. Then we can have a different debate on this.
Sir, another question is also on the basis of discrimination. The human rights of the poor are being ignored as compared to the rich, and judicial pendency and prolonged trials and sentences are taking a toll on our society. How do we protect our human rights in such scenario?
So, the question is, how do we protect the right of the poor vis-a-vis the rich?
Yes, vis-a-vis the rich. Yes, sir.
Madam, Look, the law is the same for everybody. You know, the law doesn't discriminate rich and poor people. When law is there, the law applies on the country in equal measure. The other thing that I can tell you from my personal experiences, I was talking to my, some of the security guards in my colony and the drivers and other staff members. And, to some extent, I could agree with them. And I'll put this in Hindi because that's what they told me. They said, कि साहब ये जो बीमारी आई है ना, ये हम लोगों की वजह से नहीं आई है, ये अमीर लोगों की वजह से आई है, क्योंकि हमारे पास तो फ्लाइट के पैसे ही नहीं, and that really, made an impact on me. कि बोलते हैं सर बाकी बीमारियां समझ लो जो होती है गंदगी से आती है, कुछ आती है कि हमारे पास घर छोटे तो अलग बात है, पर ये तो बीमारी लोग लेके आए जो बाहर विदेशों से उड़ के आते थे, तो ये हमको अब क्यों ब्लेम करते हैं, इन्होंने हमको क्यों नहीं काम दिया, या हमको नौकरी पे क्यों नहीं रख रहे हैं, या हमारी तनख्वाह क्यों काटते हैं. तो वो जो बातें हैं, आई थिंक that requires again a different debate as to why people, if they are not giving salaries to people, see, it is a virus that you will say may have emanated from China, or Wuhan virus as people are calling it. But what are the economic impact of this? What are the legal impact vis-a-vis the economic impact? I think for that we require greater study. We require a larger debate as to who is right and who is wrong, and what can they do and what can they not do. So when I was talking of your labor compliances and other laws in the previous segment, I meant that any industrialist who is running a factory, if the factory has been locked down and he can't go to work and he is not generating any income, how can he employ more people? So he's not trying to discriminate his employees. If he has a workforce of, let's say, 5,000 people, and he's laying off 1,000 people or 500 people or whatever the figure may be, he's not discriminating them or making them out of job because they're poor. He is letting them go because he cannot sustain enough financial worth at the time when he is hit because of a pandemic. So I think we have to understand things in that light.
Okay, so the next question is, reprisal on those who are working for human rights are getting increased day by day, both in the hands of state and non-state actors. How to take state in confidence to stop this reprisal on human rights defenders?
Madam, state, I don't think is against human rights defender as such. But look, if you ever been to any court, you'll realize that court always adheres to the principle of natural justice, and it has to listen to both the parties. So a human rights activist has every right to say that this particular thing in my society is amiss, or the particular authority is not looking at it, and they may file a writ or they may file a public interest litigation or court of law and agitate their right or agitate their cause. But as a government lawyer, one will also have to see who is representing the government to put their side of the story, whether the government has taken adequate measure at all they were happening in a particular scenario. So I don't think the state is curbing any right or putting people in the jail just because you are a human rights activist. If that was to happen, then most of the human rights people would be languishing in jails only. So it depends from fact to fact and case to case, and it's a very fact situation-based scenario.
Okay, so the next question is, how can the upsurge of domestic violence amid this pandemic can be countered, whether this phenomena has remained unnoticed?
Look, it's not unnoticed. We already have very strong domestic violence act. People are going to courts. At least I can tell you of Delhi trial courts that I personally have filed few cases for my clients and courts before Mahila court, which are now functional. And if you can show them that you have an urgency in a particular matter, you can go to Mahila court under Domestic Violence Act. You can file a FIR if you have been brutalized, if you have been hurt, if you have been there has been incidents of physical violence. You can definitely call 100 number and FIR will be lodged. And if the person or the culprit who has subjected you to that violence will be definitely arrested. So make sure that people, again, I will say for the sake of repeating myself, that if you know anybody in your in your vicinity, in your neighborhood, who is subjected to domestic violence, please stand for them, please counsel them, and please fight for them, because the legal rights are already well within their rights.
Okay, so the next question is, why human rights are frequently and flagrantly violated by government agencies who are supposed to be protector of human rights?
So this has to be a very specific question. I think I just answered a similar question before that. When you say human rights are being violated, how so? Is my question. Are you saying that the potholes are not being maintained and people are driving the car and meeting with an accident? Do you mean that police is just beating everybody? Are you saying that municipality people are not doing their job and people are falling sick? What is the exact criteria? So I think I'll need a specific question to answer this, because it has too many vagaries in it.
Sir, the next question is, what are the changing prospects for the career in human rights law amidst the pandemic and its uncertain duration?
Look, you have to understand this thing. When you say human rights, you don't have to be a specific human rights lawyer. I, as a criminal lawyer, let's say, I think criminal lawyers are the best champions of human rights because every time a person is arrested, rightly or wrongly, that's a different debate. You have to fight for their bail, you have to fight for their discharge, their acquittal, their appeals, what not, under the sun. So human rights is, everything that you see is happening wrong in society. So whether it be a case of Jarraj Phoenix, whether it be a case of lynching, whether it be a case of wrongful arrest or detention, these are all matter of human rights. So I don't think human rights is a now people have made it into a different, vertical altogether. But as a criminal lawyer, I think I defend human rights on a day-to-day basis for all my clients. So, we already have laws there. We already have enough jurisprudence, that supports human rights. So we don't need, anything extra. Perhaps we need stricter laws in the time to come. But as of now, we have adequate laws and remedies to take care of, human rights violations.
Okay, so the next question is how to tackle the mismanagement and dereliction of duties of police during the pandemic?
Same complaint, put a complaint to the DCP, put a complaint to the ACP of the police. If not, please file a public interest litigation in your high court or file a writ petition telling the particular high court to take cognizance of the matter. And if particular police station is not looking after your rights, as I said, first stop. Depending on which state you are, if you are in Delhi, it's a DCP, ACP. If you're in a state, then it's the IG or DG. Accordingly, you can lodge your complaint with them. If you can't personally go out, courier a complaint, email chale jati hain. Aajkal you can email. If you have a WhatsApp number available on the website, WhatsApp your complaint. People are active on Twitter. You can tweet a complaint to a particular police. So that will make electronic evidence available for you. Courts are working virtually. Put your petitions in the court, and you'll be heard by the court. And justice, if there's a proper case for justice, justice will be delivered by the court.
Okay, sir, the last question from the Google form is how has human rights been encroached upon with respect to the recent Vikas Dubey encounter case?
Madam, I don't think encroachment of human rights, there is an issue of encroachment of human rights, but now a panel has already been constituted, I think, by the court, which is looking into this. But there have been certain prescribed procedures, I think, which were violated, which the police could have been a little more aware of. I am sure they were aware of, but they still, could have done many things. But Vikas Dubey encounter in itself requires a different webinar. In fact, I gave 2 webinars in the last 2 weeks on Vikas Dubey encounter, which talks about different questions. I would not say, human right violation as such, but it is also poor reflection on our policing and how, police investigation takes place in the country, because he, as a criminal, had 60 odd matters on him. To say that the judiciary did not do anything, I think it's wrong. I think the police should have made a strong case against him in all the 60 matters, which was not done. So I think that requires a different webinar, as I said, to address the issue in Vikas Dubey matter.
Okay, now I'll be addressing the questions from the chat box. Okay, the first question from the chat box is how can the government strike a fair balance between protecting and promoting public health on one side and individual human rights on the other side?
Madam, I think the different state governments and the central governments are doing their job. Look, you have to understand that the government doesn't have a magic vaccination for COVID-19. As I said, every country in the world is grappling with it. So I think the government, whether it be central state government across the country, have done their best. Whatever available resources they had, all the doctors, nurses, and other, people, either the police force or the people have, done their bit. We cannot always be nitpicking and saying that they have not done their task. And if they were not doing their task and the citizens of the country were not abiding by the rule of law, by as per which we are in the lockdown, then things would have been, or it would have been a state of anarchy. Luckily, it hasn't happened. And our country, I think, has fought wonderfully, with the pandemic situation, and we are emerging stronger every day. And at least in Delhi, the good news is coming that the curve is flattening and things are happening. So I don't think there has been such great violation of human rights. Yes, you cannot make everybody happy. There could have been better checks and balances, which I think were missing. A little more planning could have gone into, the execution before the lockdown. Those things, I think, were some lapses according to me, but that's my personal opinion.
Okay, so the next question is how to deal with the hospitals denying admittance of COVID-19 positive patient as a clear violation of healthcare.
So, you can always complain to Medical Council of India because they all fall under the same jurisdiction if they're not admitting you. you can definitely go and file a consumer dispute. Medical Council of India, you can make them a party in a writ, because that will be a faster mechanism to reach a high court. You know, if you are being, and because it also will constitute your right of the violation of Article 21, because your right to live with dignity, right to get a hospital on time, right to be treated in a medical emergency is also violated. So I think, going to high court would be the swiftest and the fastest way to ensure that your human rights are protected.
Okay, sir, this is my question that in this time of COVID-19, if a normal patient goes for a normal, just like a back pain or other normal disease, the doctor does not take their work very seriously, and they maintain a very large distance and say that in this time we are not supposed to touch, and then we told what we have to do, and they much likely less do their work. So what can we do in that situation?
I think we can't say this for all the doctors. If this was the case, then the patients would not be getting treated in hospitals. It's a matter of common sense. But if somebody is having a backache, it's very different from somebody suffering from COVID-19. There are two very different things. So backache, if you're having, I can give you medical advice right now. Please apply some Iodex. I think that should sort you out.
Okay.
But blaming the whole medical fraternity like this, I don't think is the right way to go about it.
Okay. So the next question is, what is your opinion on the nationwide George Floyd protest which took place in America amidst the coronavirus? Everybody has a right to protest, but weren't they putting others at risk by doing so despite it taking place for justice?
Madam, please understand, human beings by nature are animals. And if given free rein, if there were no laws to govern us, we would be animals. So what I could see by the misconduct of the police in George Floyd's death, I saw the video. It was very disheartening. Then I also saw how everybody came on road and started vandalizing the properties and stealing the, lot many goods on main streets. It's no way. And that's why we have law in place. That's why we have policing in place. I'm not saying that, all the police force is bad or all the people are bad. But then imagine a society without law, it will lead to anarchy. And that's what exactly happened even in George Floyd's case. The culmination of a protest became, it actually went out of hand. And the way the things were vandalized later, it was a very sorry picture, because the civil society again, endangers not just themselves, but even the innocent bystanders, bystanders, on the road. So if, let's say a person is, is standing there with his family or with her family, they can also be brutalized by these people who are trying to, steal from other shops, and also it doesn't justify anything. That's why we need stronger laws. It doesn't really matter whether you're in America or in India. You have your right to protest, but the right to protest has to be reasonable. Anything which is unreasonable will not be acceded to you by the court of law eventually.
Okay. So the next question is, what are the best solutions for the sufferings of street children in case of heavy labor burden without any security in time of this epidemic? Could you please answer?
Madam, so look, street children and other people are being accorded shelter. There are shelter homes, so please visit shelter homes. There are NGOs which are working to protect their rights. You cannot have a forced child labor, as I said. There are enough judgments on this, and Article 23 and Article 24 of the Constitution specifically prohibits child labor and forced labor. So if you still see that, you can file a complaint with a particular police station that these children are being made to beg or made to work, and you can lodge a complaint.
Sir, the next question is, what about the rights of Kashmiri people, whereby Supreme Court failed to restore 4G, that too in this pandemic?
Look, I think again, if you are restricting 4G, I think that was a decision at that time when the union territories were made. So the government had to take a stand on that. I don't think stopping 4G would be violative of human rights as such, because the supply of food, water, air, the essentials, is still there. Nobody, am I to understand that by stopping a telecommunication channel, you are strangling somebody? I mean, you still need food, water to sustain yourself, right? You're not being closed in your house. So if government thinks or a particular authority thinks that for your safety, the 4G has to be, or a particular network has to be, blocked for the time being, I don't think there is anything wrong with that. You're not eating your phone, you're not eating your SIM. Please understand that, And in the larger debate, you may have your right to freedom, but that comes with certain reasonable restrictions under the constitution. So that can't be violative out and out.
Shutting down
Yeah.
the internet 4G for almost a year on the humanitarian grounds, how does it seem to be normal for you?
Madam, look, telephone communication is a very recent thing in terms of mobile technology. Were people in Kashmir not living, or people in India, or people in the world not living when the radio and phone were not there? You have to understand that. Phone is a very recent phenomenon. Just because we're all addicted to phone doesn't mean without phone we can't live our lives. In Corona times, we did not go out for 3 months and there was a nationwide lockdown, but that does not mean that human rights were being trampled upon left, right, and center. You know, you could still be in your house and eat your food, and you know, still look after your family. I mean, it requires a larger debate. If you think by disconnecting the phone connection, human rights are being violated and no news is being reported, then it takes a different angle. But only saying that my SIM is not working and my human rights are being trampled upon, I think I would not say is a very right thing to say. Sometimes, you know, we also have to look at the agenda and the concept of, you know, the government as to why they're doing a particular thing. Lot many things have to, you know, be deliberated upon.
Sir, I would like to point out one thing which is in my mind, that Article 21 grants us right to livelihood, and this pandemic situation, most of the population is working from home. Even you and I all are working from home, from our internet, from our Wi-Fi. So how the people of Kashmir, when not providing particularly 4G or even a SIM, then how may we assume that they are even to work for their livelihood and work for their family and feed them? Is it not the violation of Kashmir people for not letting them work for their livelihood?
Right, madam. So let's see, you have mixed two questions. One, I don't want to make it a Kashmir debate, but because then there will be no end to it, but I'll try to answer your question. If you want to work from home, nobody's stopping that. But you have to understand the history that India has in terms of having Kashmir and having a very difficult relationship and painful relationship with Pakistan as a neighbor. Are you to tell me, or am I to assume that we do not have a problem of terrorism in Kashmir? Am I to understand that there is no infiltration amongst the border? Are we to let the government, because, you know, when we use our mobile phones, you know, a lot of airwaves are there which can be intercepted or which can be wrongly communicated to people. And should we let a neighboring country allow our own nationals to go against the country and create an environment of displeasure and terrorism within the particular state? So, you know, larger questions have to be addressed. It's not just because you have switched off my telephone or you have taken away my right, I'm not able to do a particular task. The second point of your question still is a little reasonable, because when we are all working from home, I understand that working from home, but tell me this, I think the Wi-Fi's were allowed in Kashmir, if I'm not wrong. Please get that factual information. I think the Wi-Fi and other internet services were started in limited manner in Kashmir so that people can at least have that. Because, you know, if the Wi-Fi is there, then you can use your internet and can participate in a webinar. But everybody who is working from home is primarily working in a particular given industry or a service industry where they can work from home. But if I'm in a goods industry, I have to go to my factory, I have to go to my manufacturing unit, I have to be physically present. If I'm an auto rickshaw driver, I cannot afford a webinar. If I am a merchant, if I'm a shopkeeper, I have to be in my shop to make ends meet. So not everything is happening from working from home. It's a fancy term for people who are in the service industry because they can afford to work from home, but not everybody can afford to work from home. So you will have to give me more factual data as to what is on ground happening in Kashmir. Is everybody actually locked down in their home and nobody is letting to live? Is the situation so bad? And if the situation is so bad, then you must put a PL in Supreme Court of India and let the court take that action.
Okay, sir, the next question from the chat box is, in this pandemic situation, are there any possibility of violating the right of secularism?
Madam, I don't think, look, how are the rights getting trampled? Is the state telling you not to worship? I don't think state is telling anybody to not worship or, respect the religion. I don't think that is happening. Let's not give it a twist which it doesn't require.
Okay, sir. In your view, what is the solution of gender discrimination which are mostly arise in this pandemic?
By gender discrimination, you mean and by gender, there are all types of gender, male, female, and the third gender.
Yes.
But I think that they are being protected. And as I said, there are laws in place. And I already said in the previous question answer how you can, agitate those rights. So and when you say gender discrimination, what do you mean? For example, I'll give an example of Sushant Singh Rajput suicide or murder. I don't know what it is. That can also be treated as a gender discrimination where, the female gender is trying to manipulate the male gender. Or I can tell you of posh acts where, strong laws are there for women and which are genuinely sometimes harassed by, by their employers or by their, employers in a particular office setup, and they have a right, and then there is a gender discrimination. So that again, it is a very, very wide ambit. So gender discrimination already is governed by various laws. And, when we say gender discrimination, human right, we are making khichdi of it. So we have to, think very categorically when we are, studying different parts of law and to answer them accordingly.
Okay, so this would be the last question. Do you think imposing lockdown for long term is violation of human rights?
Madam, I think imposing lockdown and protecting the lives of citizens is protecting human rights. Let me put it that way. Today, if the courts are not open, and though we are all facing difficulty, a lot of my brother lawyers and sister lawyers are facing difficulties in earning a livelihood. But imagine this, if today the court premises were to open and people, contacted coronavirus, they would die. And then they would still blame the state, that state did this or the court did this. So, it's a very, thin line to protect you. So if the state protects you in a lockdown, you say state is doing good. If the state doesn't protect you, you blame the state. So again, it becomes very difficult for the state or for the government to decide what to do. And when they're taking every measure to protect your rights, protect your health, which is paramount. If you have your health intact, you can still, rebound, you can still survive, you can still make money, you can still gain a good employment later. But let's say if a person drops dead because of coronavirus, then that's the end of their story.
Okay. Sir, this is the last question. What is the human rights that are violated and temporarily annulled under the pretext of COVID-19 pandemic?
Temporarily annulled?
Yes, sir. That is one question from the participant.
Madam, I think whenever there has been any annulment or there has been thing, people have gone to court, as I said. I don't think any diktat has come from the government which says we are snatching this right away from you. If that would have happened, people I'm sure would have filed a PL by now. But tell me, make me understand. What has the government done? Are they asking you not to cook at home? Are they asking you not to pray? Are they asking you not to watch internet or your Prime Video or your Netflix? Is the government asking you not to have regional restrictions? All they are saying is, be cautious, in your approach. Please don't violate curfew norms. Please don't put each other in danger. Please wear masks. That is what the government is trying to, tell the citizens of this country, so that we can all remain safe and we can, progress the economy of this country.
Okay. So with this, the question, we are done with the question. Now, I would like to request convener of Human Rights Initiative Club, Professor Ankit Rai sir, to propose the vote of thanks. Ankit sir? Vishwas? Hello? Am I audible?
Aditi, yes, you're audible. I would request our former HOD and faculty advisor of IMS Human Rights Initiative, Neeti Sinha ma'am, to for concluding remarks first. Neeti ma'am.
Neeti Sinha ma'am is not here, Vishwas.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir.
Okay, so should I take over now?
Yes, sir. Sure, sir. Sure.
Okay, very good evening to everyone. Good evening to the eminent speaker of the evening, Mr. Jayant Bhatt, Advocate Supreme Court of India. Let me start on a lighter note by thanking the Almighty, because we know that the whole globe has been gripped with this corona pandemic, and I think we all are safe and doing well, and because of that reason we are sitting here. So as a religious person, as an atheist, okay, you may not be liking this argument, but as a religious person, I would like to start by thanking an Almighty. Then obviously the resource person for today's evening, that is Mr. Jayant Bhatt, Advocate Supreme Court of India. Advocate Jayant Bhatt has been in association with us with IMS Law College. Previously, he was there with us on the virtual national moot court competition on the finals as a judge of the final, one of the judge of the finals. And let me start by putting this aspect that in IMS we try to blend academic discourse with practical aspect. And I think I would like to thank Advocate Jayant Bhatt from the bottom of my heart that he brought out, because I also predominantly, I also had an interest area of constitutional law and human rights. So as he pointed out at one point of discussion in time that, okay, that will become an academic discourse. Okay, so he was bang on throughout his argument, and he was very much giving us a practical examples, okay, that how human rights are trampled, how human rights are violated by the institutions. And he gave us 4 or 5 practical examples, especially the violation of human rights which took place during the time of this pandemic or during this time of lockdown period. So sir, as a faculty convener, I would like to extend a very heartfelt thank you to you again, because as I mentioned again that we basically try to rely on the provisions and the case jurisprudence, okay, to tell our students. But coming from the industry, legal industry, you highlighted some of the practical issues which we need to take into consideration when we are talking about human right per se, although the topic of today's discussion was human right during the corona crisis. Now, I would also like to thank the higher management of the IMS Noida and IMS Law College, starting with the President Sir, Shri Rajiv Gupta Sir, and CMD Ma'am, Shilpi Gupta, for providing us all the opportunities during these pandemic times so that we can continue with this learning sphere of us. Also, I would like to thank the Dean Academics of IMS Noida, Professor Dr. Manju Gupta Ma'am, who has been a constant guide and support for us throughout these lockdown period. Then our own Professor Dr. K.S. Bhati, Dean IMS Law College, and the program coordinator of IMS Law College, Professor Govind Prasad Goel, and the advisor of this IMS Human Rights Initiative Society, Professor Dr. Neeti Sinha Ma'am, for extending all the support, assistance whenever we require from our side. It would not be justice on my part if I am not be thanking the main, you can say, the brain behind these webinars or coming of this society. I think the president of the society, Megha Gupta, Vishwas, today's coordinator of the events, Japneet, Aditi, and all the office bearers and the members of the IMS Human Rights Initiative Society. With these submissions, I will rest, and keeping the promise that in near future also we'll continue this learning sphere in the time of this pandemic. Thank you. Over to you, Japneet.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, sir, for a stimulating speech and an interactive session, yet an informative session. And the whole team of IMS Law College Noida is honored by your presence. Thank you so much, sir. And thank you so much, Ankit. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you,
ma'am.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir. And of course, thank you so much, Ankit, sir, for giving me this opportunity and having faith in me that I can actually host this webinar. Thank you so much to the entire team of the IMS Human Rights Initiative. And of course, thank you so much, Zain, sir.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, sir.